my first business venture. Welcome to the Steelo Podcast, the podcast where we share stories, insights, and business advice from our experience in the steel industry and behind the scenes here at Steelo. Hosted by our incredible team, we look forward to bringing you more episodes filled with stories, thoughts, and industry insights from all levels of our business. Enjoy this episode and don't forget to follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today I'll be talking about how I got my feet into the business world, and that happened many years ago. I was at high school, so I must have been probably 17 years old, although I did have various smaller, I can't even call them business ventures when I was younger, but this one was the proper one with let's say a P&L, a profit and loss statement, and so on. So my dad happened to buy a plot of land. It was around 1 hectare, which is 10,000 square meters. So in other words, 100 meters one way and 100 meters the other way. Although this plot was actually 50 meters wide and 200 meters long. Now I had this opportunity to do something with this land because my dad just bought it more because he wanted to flip it. So his intention was to basically split it into probably 10 or so smaller parcels and then sell it on, which he eventually did. But initially I had the opportunity to do something with it. So I've always sort of had some interest in agriculture. Because I just thought that it's so easy. You just plant a seed and you grow money, almost like growing money on trees. It's probably because now I know that I was always interested in manufacturing, and when you're a kid, you can't actually get to know manufacturing from an industrial perspective, whereas growing plants, it is actually something you can witness yourself, and you can see that you're starting from a substrate, the seed, and then after a while you end up with a product that has real value in the marketplace. So for some reason, I can't really remember why, but sunflowers just were the obvious choice to me, and the maths were very simple. When you plant sunflowers, you need 1 square meter per sunflower for it to grow relatively big. And this was done abroad. This was in Poland, and there you use sunflowers for 2 things. One is to obviously make oil out of it, and secondly, which is probably a bit of a surprise, but basically for consuming. So you just sort of grab yourself the sunflower, the head that is left at the end of the season. You just sort of pick the seeds and you just nibble. You just crush them with your teeth and take the bits inside and then just chew it. And it is actually very addictive. When you start eating, you can't stop. So yeah, that's something I found as well. I really liked the taste of it, and yeah, just munched on. And my intention was to sell them to end consumers, so not for oil making, but just for seed consumption. And back then, the price was, let's say, around 2 zloty. So just for argument's sake, for ease of conversation, let's just keep it as pounds. So let's say it was £2. And I quickly worked out that if I have 10,000 square meters available with 1 sunflower per square meter, and I sell each for half the price, so like a proper bargain, discounting all worst case scenarios, I would end up with £1 per sunflower, therefore with £10,000. Simple, yeah. So I first had to invest money, and I had to pay to first plough the field, and that was around 300, let's call it pounds. And also I was lucky because I had the seeds for free. So sort of my family, or one member of the family, they actually are farmers, so I got a whole bag of seeds from them. And I obviously wanted to save costs as much as I could, so I planted everything myself. So I spent a few days, it was a weekend and then a few afternoons, walking every meter. So I had to cover 200 sort of steps or sections, each 50 meters long across. And every step I made, I dropped a seed and then covered it with my foot. At the end of this process, I was really, really tired. Like my legs were aching, my hands were aching, carrying the bag with the seeds, and it was really, really hard work. But I remember the moment I planted the last seed in the far corner, and I just sat down, and I already felt the effects of my work. I already could imagine myself on the thing I wanted to buy using the money that I will have by selling these sunflowers. I was doing something that you should not be doing, which is spending the money before you have it. And I was feeding my dreams. I always wanted to have a motorbike, as you do when you're younger. And I wanted to spend, I think it was around £7,000 or £8,000, so to say. And I just knew that it's going to happen. Like, the hard work is done. It's done and dusted. The only thing I need to do now is patiently wait 3 or 4 months and I'll have a motorbike. So I was really proud of myself, and obviously my mind was already on the bike, and I could just envisage myself on that bicycle I wanted. It was actually a Suzuki Bandit 600N, which stands for naked, in red. So I was already on that bike. A few weeks later, I came back just to check upon the field, what's going on, and that was the second best feeling in the world after thinking, after the thoughts I had after I planted all the seeds, because the view was just beautiful. Across the field, there was this very pale green color because all the seeds have started to grow. So you had these first 2 leaves that stem out from the seed. And that was exhilarating. I just thought, yeah, this is 100% happening. This motorbike is mine. I then came back around another, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later to check upon the field. And that was a disappointing view. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't like heartbreaking. It was a bad view because the weeds have started to grow as well. And now the field was really green, but not because of the sunflowers alone. It was because everywhere in between, the weed was chasing the sunflowers. So I still didn't panic because you still had plenty of black patches of earth between. And I just thought that the weed won't catch up. It'll just the sunflowers, they're obviously tall plants. They grow up to like 2 meters. So yeah, that won't be a threat. So I came back in like a week or 2 later again, and unfortunately this was on the verge of being heartbreaking because I then realized that actually the weeds will catch up and probably suppress the sunflowers. So I quickly called my grandpa, who had some experience in the past, and he said, okay, fine, I'm going to sort out the family. And so he did. He called my family members. He mobilized them, and in the first possible weekend, they turned up. I think there were like 5 or 6 of us, and we were basically weeding the field. Now, I thought, apologies for the background noise, because you can hear at Steelo, we don't rest. We continue to work and bash out steel. So we started weeding the field, and it was hard work. Like, I thought planting the seeds was hard work, but actually weeding is even worse, because when planting I was in an upright position and only using my leg to cover the seeds in soil, whereas now you basically bending downwards and have to pull the weeds out. We only covered a very, very small portion of the field, and was basically a bit too late. The other thing was that this was sort of all volunteer work. They were there just to help me out. I couldn't employ them or have them for longer. It was only, I think, a weekend or maybe 2. And it was also the time when summer holidays came about. So the school year ended. So I actually moved to that field. There was this small, sort of almost like derelict house on the field as well. And I stayed there with my mate. And we just weeding the whole field every day. But the problem was that by the time I got round there during the school holidays, it was a bit too late. And the growth of these sunflowers was suppressed by the weeds. So I could see in other sunflower fields, the sunflowers themselves were much taller than mine. They were around waist height. So I wanted to trick nature, and I wanted to basically add fertilizer. So I only weeded the area around a sunflower and then just dropped a few pellets of this fertilizer. And again, I thought that I was wise and that I sort of cheated nature and will be able to still harvest the whole field, and then I'll have my motorbike. What happened next was actually very, very heartbreaking, because the fertilizer that I dropped was too much for the sunflowers, and wherever I dropped the fertilizer, it burnt out the sunflower itself. So out of all this hard work, all the time spent on weeding it out and then fertilizing it, it was all futile and basically wasted time. So effectively, out of the whole field, I guess there was only maybe one full row of sunflowers that actually grew to its full capacity. It was actually half the width, so 25 meters, but probably 2 or maybe 3 rows. So yeah, it was probably one full row if you added all the bits that didn't grow to plan. And then also, as it happens in life, the ones that actually grew the biggest were stolen. So I turned up one day, and obviously the biggest ones were cut off, so only the bare stem sticking out, which was heartbreaking in itself. But then came harvest time, and I was only able to take the first few ones in the corner closest to the road. So I packed it all in bags. I looked like Father Christmas because I had these big black plastic bags. Packed them in 3 different sizes, so small, medium and large. And indeed, I went to a market. It was in Warsaw. The farmers, they were laughing at me because it was me, this young kid with these black plastic bags, setting up. I had to pay a fee to sort of rent the space on the market. And yeah, I just wrapped these bags open and sort of had a price tag to it. And yeah, I remember the mockery, like the farmers saying, "Oh, a guy trying his luck in agriculture and so on." But yeah, so be it. I was already there, so it's nothing embarrassing. And yeah, I started selling them, and I had to sell all of them. I mean, I didn't have many, and I sold all of the large ones. The medium ones, I had to quickly adjust my pricing and start adding like 2 for 1 and things like that. And for the small ones, initially it was 5 for 1, and at the end I just handed them out for free. So all in all, business-wise, I spent 300 zloty, which is, let's say, pounds, as an investment. A lot of hard work, a lot of free work done by my family members. And then the money that I managed to sell the sunflowers for was only £30. So all in all, I made a loss of £270. My motorbike wasn't there for me. And yeah, this was a first proper business, but first also failed business. Now, the thing that I really I enjoy doing is learning from life and from my own mistakes. And that business, even though it's a funny story and I have very fond memories about it, but till this day, I have this lesson that if you're stepping into a new area, they're probably, like 99%, there are things that you don't know. The unknown unknowns, as they called. And it's something you really have to be careful with because it could kill you. I've only spent £300 for that business, but some might spend £300,000 investing in something that they're not familiar with. So you have to really be curious and find out as much as you can, due diligence before splashing out money, because quite often, as you know, when you explore a new area or even if it's a hobby, there's the surface and then there's the bottom of the sport. So even like weightlifting, you just think, yeah, it's just about weightlifting. But then, you know, there are all these different pieces of equipment and diets and ways of lifting techniques and so on. So there's always this second floor or sort of background thing that isn't quite apparent or obvious on the outset. The other thing is hats off to all the farmers. I really appreciate the hard work they put in. There's no cutting corners. You have to weed things out. You just have to work manually. So I really pay tribute to all the farmers, and whenever I see someone that feels like, wow, they're really doing something that's hard work to start with, and also in treacherous conditions and not necessarily paid well. So yeah, I've walked away from the agriculture business side of things, although probably like Jeremy Clarkson, I would probably one day like to go back to it, because the joy of seeing plants grow is just something you can't describe. I do grow some veg and so on in my garden, because I just love that sensation of creating something almost out of nothing. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content that is helpful, not only for people in Steelo, but in business in general. See you soon.